At exactly 0317 hours on June 3, 2026, the black surface of the Strait of Hormuz was pierced by the blades of an MH-60R Seahawk helicopter descending to 18 meters above the water. Below, the hull of the Bashir Nasser, a 22,000-ton Iranian-flagged crude oil tanker, sat motionless, engines dead, AIS beacon dark, and no response to 7 consecutive hailing attempts on Channel 16 from the USS Gravely DDG-107. The tanker was the 10th vessel in 3 weeks to attempt a blockade run through the Strait of Hormuz, defying the U.S. Navy's enforcement zone that had been in effect since President Trump authorized Operation Iron Curtain on February 28th. Intelligence from the NSA's SIGINT platform had flagged a disturbing pattern. These ships weren't just carrying crude. They were ferrying drone components, precision guidance chips, and encrypted battlefield relay equipment to IRGC logistics depots in Bandar Abbas. 6 operators from SEAL Team 3 were already hooked to the fast rope, boots over the edge of the Seahawk's open door. The boarding operation had been textbook clean up to this point. Radar sweep from the P-8A Poseidon circling at 18,000 feet showed no personnel movement on deck, no thermal signatures near the forward containers. The tactical action officer aboard the Gravely gave the green light at 03:18:44. Go, go, go. The rope snapped taut. The first SEAL's boots touched the Bashir Nasser's deck at 03:19:02. That was the moment the trap closed. At exactly 03:19:10, 8 seconds after first contact, the Gravely's SPY-1DV phased array radar operator screamed across the tactical net. Flash, flash, flash. Multiple fire control. Also radar uplinks. Source is the Bashir Nasser herself. The ship's passive cargo containers, 4 of them, aligned portside amidships, weren't carrying crude processing equipment. The lids hydraulically blew open in a cascade of compressed nitrogen. Inside, 4 Club K caliber 3M-14TE cruise missile systems, erecting from horizontal to launch angle in under 4 seconds, their active radar seekers spinning up and immediately locking onto the Seahawk hovering just 18 meters above the deck. The Seahawk pilot, Lieutenant Commander Marcus Webb, didn't wait for a fire order. Pure combat instinct, he yanked collective to maximum and broke hard right at 03:19:14, deploying all 4 ALE-47 chaff dispensers simultaneously. The closest Club K seeker was less than 60 meters away when the first chaff cloud burst. In the microseconds that followed, the missile's active radar was flooded with 10,000 metallic fragments, generating a scatter return 40 times stronger than the helicopter's own fuselage. The first missile tracked the chaff cloud and detonated 80 meters off the starboard quarter. The second missile, operating on a backup infrared seeker, clipped the Seahawk's tail rotor assembly with fragmentation. The helicopter didn't explode. It spiraled. Mayday, mayday, tail rotor failure. We're going in. Grid. 26.4 north, 56.1 east. 6 SEALs are on the deck. 6 SEALs are on the deck. God help them. Lieutenant Commander Webb drove the crippled MH-60R into a controlled ditching 400 meters northeast of the Bashir Nasser at 03:19:51. The aircraft hit the water nose up, broke at the cabin frame, and sank within 90 seconds. Both pilots survived. Their rescue was now a secondary problem. The primary problem was what the Bashir Nasser had just revealed to every sensor in the 5th Fleet's battle network. This was not a lone ship. It was the detonator. Aboard the Gravely, Commander Rachel Okonkwo's tactical plot lit up like a battlefield Christmas tree. The Link 16 data stream from the E-2D Hawkeye orbiting at 25,000 feet over the Gulf of Oman was now painting a picture that turned every stomach in the Combat Information Center. At the same time, the Club K launchers erupted on the Bashir Nasser, 19 other vessels in the vicinity, all previously cataloged as routine commercial traffic, simultaneously killed their AIS signals. 19 ships. They had been hiding in plain sight for 72 hours, drifting with the current, disguised as a routine cluster of tanker traffic backed up by the U.S. blockade enforcement queue. The formation wasn't random. It was a pre-calculated interlocking fire arc. Each vessel was positioned to cover a 22-degree sector of the strait, a complete 360-degree saturation envelope centered on the projected track of USS Abraham Lincoln CVN-72, the flagship of CSG-12 currently transiting at 18 knots 47 nautical miles to the east. Simultaneously, the 5th Fleet SIGINT node at NSA Bahrain broadcast a priority Omega intercept to all units. Ballistic missile launch signatures detected. Kuestak Coastal Site, Jask, and Bandar A Lenge. 3 separate IRGC missile batteries had gone hot. The weapons, Zulfiqar, 2 precision ballistic missiles with a CEP of under 50 meters at 700 kilometers range, each carrying a 600 kilogram thermobaric warhead specifically optimized against hardened naval superstructures. The firing solution had been preloaded. These missiles had been waiting for the Club K ambush to begin. Iran's plan was now brutally clear. The Bashir Nasser was a sacrificial ignition switch designed to destroy the SEAL boarding team down the Seahawk and force the Gravely into emergency defensive posture. While U.S. assets diverted to rescue and response, the ballistic missile salvo would arc over the Zagros Mountains and descend on the Abraham Lincoln before its Aegis system could build a full fire control track on every warhead simultaneously. 14 minutes from launch to impact, the life or death clock had started. Do you believe that Abraham Lincoln's battle group can survive a coordinated Club K and ballistic missile saturation attack? Let us know in the comments. At 03/2022, Commander Okonkwo issued the most critical order of her career. She did not call for rescue operations. She called for MCON Alpha termination, a full-power, all-sensor active mode that would light up the entire electromagnetic spectrum for a 200-kilometer radius and betray the Gravely's position to every Iranian EW station in the region. It was the right call. All stations, and this is Bravo India, actual, Vampire. Vampire, Vampire. Multiple inbound, execute Hyperion. I say again, execute Hyperion. Hyperion was 5th Fleet's integrated counter-missile protocol, a sequenced network defense architecture that required all 7 ships in CSG-12 to instantaneously share fire control solutions through the Naval Integrated Fire Control Counter Air System, NIFCCA. In theory, it turned 7 ships into a single distributed Aegis brain capable of engaging 84 separate ballistic and cruise missile tracks simultaneously. In practice, it had never been tested against a 19-ship Club K swarm combined with a 3-battery ballistic missile salvo at the same time. On the Abraham Lincoln, the watch officer in the Combat Direction Center triggered the ship's AN/SPS-49 long-range air surveillance radar and the ship's pair of AN/SPY-6V one-phased array panels simultaneously. The SPY-6, 35 times more sensitive than its predecessor, began resolving the incoming Zulfiqar warheads at 03/2041, a full 90 seconds before they reached the radar horizon under legacy systems. But the fire control computer's threat queue was immediately overwhelmed by a second input: 47 simultaneous Club K launch signatures from the surrounding vessel formation. Not 4, not 10, 47. The IRGC had modified their Club K launchers. Each commercial container had been configured with a 3-cell rapid salvo configuration, converting 16 civilian ships into triple launch platforms. The ships hadn't just been blocking positions, they had been floating multi-cell VLS batteries, waiting in ambush for 72 hours inside the commercial traffic lane that USROE prohibited from preemptive strike without confirmed hostile intent. They had just declared hostile intent with 47 missiles in the air. Simultaneously, and this was the detail that U.S. intelligence had not predicted, a Fateh-class IRGC submarine operating under the acoustic shadow of the commercial fleet triggered its torpedo tube doors at a bearing of 195 degrees, 7,400 meters from the Abraham Lincoln's keel. The passive sonar operator aboard USS Missouri, SSN 780, a Virginia-class attack submarine running silent at 340 feet, heard the unmistakable transient click of tube doors cycling open. He reported it in 2.1 seconds. His fire control officer had a solution in 11 seconds, but the rules of engagement required confirmation of hostile launch before weapons free. 9 seconds later, 2 wire-guided torpedoes entered the water. The clock now read 4 simultaneous threat vectors: ballistic missiles inbound from 3 shore batteries, 47 Club K cruise missiles threading through the commercial traffic corridor, 2 torpedoes running hot and straight at the carrier, and 6 SEAL operators stranded on the deck of a hostile vessel with no extraction asset. 14 minutes had compressed to 11. The Abraham Lincoln had never been more alone. From the carrier's deck, the EA-18G Growler Squadron, 4 aircraft of VA-Q-138, was already airborne, having launched at 0308 on routine patrol. The lead Growler pilot, Commander Isaac Henriksen, received the Hyperion execution order at 032106. His ALQ-99V jamming pods were already warm. He did not hesitate. TAC Growler lead, activating NGJ-MB full spectrum, painting all active seekers, going Winchester on jamming, nothing gets a lock. The next generation jammer, mid-band pod, erupted with a broadband deception jamming signal that targeted every active radar frequency used by the Club K's terminal guidance seekers. Rather than burning through the seekers with brute power, the NGJ-MB transmitted false terrain returns, essentially placing phantom coastlines and phantom ship hulls into the missile seeker's synthetic aperture radar picture. Club K missiles programmed for waypoint navigation with terminal active radar homing began to resolve against phantom contacts. 17 missiles in the first wave broke trajectory and impacted the sea between false contacts, but 30 missiles remained. And the Zulfiqar ballistic warheads didn't use active radar. They used GPS-aided inertial navigation with an optional terminal EO seeker. Jamming didn't stop them. Only kinetic interceptors did. The Aegis fire control computers aboard the Gravely USS Stockdale DDG-106 and USS Wayne E. Meyer DDG-108 simultaneously received Track 4471 through Track 4474. The 4 confirmed ballistic re-entry vehicles from the first Zulfiqar salvo, and allocated SM-3 Block 2A interceptors from each destroyer's Mk-41 VLS cells. The intercept geometry required simultaneous launch within a 4-second window. 14 SM-3s broke the surface in a compressed roar of solid rocket exhaust and climbed at Mach 4.5 toward the upper atmosphere. The terminal phase was 38 seconds of silence on every radio net except sonar. Then the intercept confirmations came in rapid succession. Kill, 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 miss, reassign. Track 4473, the 4th Zulfiqar warhead, had executed a terminal maneuver. The re-entry vehicle jinked at 18 kilometers altitude, its maneuvering fins deflecting 4 degrees, enough to break the SM-3's kinematic envelope. The interceptor flew through empty air. Track 4473 was now 9 minutes from the Abraham Lincoln's flight deck. The second intercept layer, the Abraham Lincoln's own SM-2 Block 3C battery, engaged Track 4473 at 45 kilometers altitude. The radar return was clean. The fire control solution was perfect. The SM-2 climbed out of the VLS and closed at Mach 3.5. At 31 kilometers altitude, the proximity fuse detonated. The warhead fragmented. 2 large fragments continued on a ballistic arc. The third layer, CIWS Phalanx, Block 1B aboard the carrier, the last mechanical line of defense, tracked the incoming debris at 0331-22. The 20mm M61A1 rotary cannon spun to 4,500 rounds per minute and walked fire through both fragments at 800 meters. 1 fragment was destroyed. The second struck the carrier's island structure at reduced velocity, a 4-kilogram piece of tungsten alloy from the Zulfiqar's ballistic nose cone, blowing out 3 radar antenna panels and killing 1 sailor on the signal bridge. The Abraham Lincoln had been hit. Not sunk, not mission killed, but hit. Meanwhile, the Missouri had its answer. At 03:21:55, the moment the IRGC Fateh submarine's torpedoes achieved active sonar homing lock on the carrier, the rules of engagement were satisfied. Commander Diana Chaby ordered weapons free. 2 Mk-48 ADCA-P block, 3 torpedoes launched from tubes 1 and 3, using wire guidance through the dense acoustic environment of the commercial ship traffic corridor. The Fateh-class submarine, smaller, quieter, and dangerously capable in shallow water, attempted an emergency ballast blow and sprint to the north at 03:22:19. The Missouri sonar team tracked the sprint at 18 knots. At that speed, the Fateh generated a cavitation signature like a high-speed blender in a bathtub. The first Mark 48 impacted the Fateh's engineering spaces at 03:24:03. The second detonated against the pressure hull amidships 2.8 seconds later. The wreck of the Fateh-class submarine settled to the seabed at 87 meters depth, 6.2 nautical miles south of Abu Musa Island. There were no survivors. The Club K swarm had been reduced from 47 to 8 active tracks through a combination of growler jamming, Sea Sparrow intercepts from the escort screen, and CIWS terminal defense. Of the remaining 8, 3 impacted the ocean within 400 meters of the carrier's hull. Their terminal seekers decoyed by the AN/SLQ-32 V6 shipboard EW suite, broadcasting false targets. 3 more were intercepted by Ram Block 2 missiles from the Stockdale. One struck the Stockdale's helicopter hangar deck, causing a catastrophic fire but no magazine detonation. One struck the Wayne E. Myers bow section above the waterline, flooding the forward VLS cells and killing the ship's forward fire control radar. Both ships remained underway, and then there were the 6 SEAL operators still on the Bashir Nasser. The IRGC had not abandoned its card. With the air and undersea battle going catastrophically wrong, the Qasem Island Command Center issued a radio order to the Bashir Nasser's hidden crew, a 22-man Quds Force team that had been hiding in the ballast tanks since the ship departed Fujairah 3 days ago. They emerged from access hatches with PKM machine guns and ATGM launchers, moving to isolate the 6 Americans on the ship's forward deck. Without air cover, the Seahawk was at the bottom of the strait, and without a second MH-60 within range, the SEALs were on their own. Chief Petty Officer Damian Torres, the team's leading petty officer, made the call that would later be cited in every Naval Special Warfare Doctrine review for the next decade. He didn't try to fight through to the bridge. He took his team over the side. 6 SEALs entered the water at 03:27:44, swimming northeast on a bearing of 042, relying on their combat swimmer training to stay low in the 3-foot chop. Their extraction would have to be surface-based. The Gravely, despite her own battle damage, 1 Club K had detonated 180 meters off her port beam, shredding her SPS-67 surface search radar and wounding 7 sailors, closed to within 1,200 meters of the Bashir Nasser at 03:3400 and deployed 2 Mark V RHIB craft with combat rescue swimmers. The SEALs were pulled from the water at 03:41:17. All 6 were alive. 2 had gunshot wounds from the Quds Force suppression fire during their escape. None were fatal. The Bashir Nasser, now confirmed as an armed combatant vessel, was struck by 2 Harpoon Block 2 missiles at 03:45:33. She burned for 4 hours and sank at 08:01 local time. By 0600 hours on June 3rd, the Battle of the Hormuz intercept was over. The Abraham Lincoln was operational but wounded. 1 dead, 11 injured, 4 antenna arrays destroyed, and 3 radar systems offline. The Stockdale was on fire and being escorted toward Bahrain by USS William P. Lawrence. The Wayne E. Meyer was holding position under escort with forward flooding under control. 1 IRGC Fateh-class submarine was destroyed. 1 Club K flotilla of 19 vessels was either sinking, burning, or scattering into Iranian territorial waters. 3 Iranian ballistic missile batteries on the coast had been struck by Tomahawk Block 5 retaliatory strikes authorized by CENTCOM at 03:3700, targeting radar and command structures with MTI precision. But as dawn broke orange over the strait and the carrier's damage control parties fought the fires in the island structure, the NSA intercept station at Bahrain forwarded one final message to the fleet, captured from an encrypted IRGC frequency 6 minutes after the last Club K impacted the water. The message was short. It was in Farsi. Translated, it read, Phase 1 complete. Activate the reserves. The U.S. Navy had survived the most complex, most precisely coordinated multi-domain ambush in the history of the Iran War. But somewhere in the Makran coastal mountains and underground bunkers that no satellite had yet resolved, a second salvo was being prepared. The Strait of Hormuz was not safe. It would not be safe for a long time.